You enjoy. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated. Executioner General, written by HidnFox. Everyone was not having a good day. In fact, it was downright terrible, miserable even. Everyone had been caught, apprehended, arrested, dead. Everyone knew what happened when a magical was caught. They visited the Executioner General, which was where everyone was being dragged right now. The two soldiers' heavy gates filled the air with the martial beat, as all turned to the embarrassing display. Blindfolded, gagged, and chained, everyone could feel the gazes of the townspeople like searing rays of light burning holes in her. The wind whistled, the soldiers marched, and everyone watched, and everyone tripped. The soldiers began to pull her up, but the air was cut with a yell, "Witch!" And more yells followed. "Magical! Demon spawn! Elf war! Spirit stealer!" And it was all too much, and everyone broke down. She began to cry. She lost all will to move, and sank like a puppet in the hands of an uncaring master, only saved from the ground by the two soldiers holding her. They dragged her through the streets after their attempts to get her to stand failed. Windows and doors opened to see what was the cause of the wailing. Merchants and barkeeps paused what they were saying to gawk at the teenage witch being dragged through the streets. And they threw more insults into the mix, and the occasional rock. "Hag! Traitor! Hellborn!" Everyone was crying, her sorrow made manifest dripping to the cobblestones below. Her own failures, her dooming her family to ostracism, and her imminent and most likely painful death played first chair in her mind. When the voices eventually died away, and the only sounds were the soldiers' footsteps and her sobs, everyone knew that they had arrived at the garrison. The back of it, to be precise. That's where the Executioner General was. Everyone heard a wooden door creak open and began to cry louder. She heard the echoes of the soldiers' footsteps as they moved farther into the garrison. Eventually, they stopped, and everyone heard another door being opened. She had been reduced to an unsteady breaths and shaking. The soldiers threw everyone onto a soft mattress, and she heard the door shut. She tried to sit up, to move, but the chains and ropes prevented that. She tried hopelessly for a few moments, before she stopped trying altogether. Tears were flowing down her cheeks, a steady stream of despair. A large, warm finger brushed away some of her tears. Everyone froze. She wasn't alone. Whoever was in the room wiped everyone's face and grabbed her chains, pulling her into a sitting position. Her heartbeat quickened. She began to try and think of a way to escape, but realized it was hopeless. She shivered. What were they going to do? She was scared. She felt the hands move around her back, heard a small click, and the chains began to be unwound. Then the ropes, and the shackles, and the cuffs, and as her hands were freed, she felt the gag being released. Slowly reaching up, she pulled off the blindfold. Expecting a dark, rusted dungeon full of unexplained torture machines, she instead found herself in a small, cozy room. It was well lit, and a fire roared in the hearth. Books lined the walls, a desk on one side, and a table filled with every type of cake, pie, cookie, and tart everyone could ever imagine. More importantly, in the chair next to the bed everyone found herself sitting on was a man. He looked about 50 winters old, with a thick, bushy brown beard with speckles of grey. His face looked welcoming and fatherly, and as if he laughed hard at every joke he heard. He was wearing old armor that had been used well according to the many dents. It was polished to a sheen, and looked as well worn as the man did. A large, flathead sword leaned against the chair. What really stood out to everyone was his eyes. Brown eyes that looked capable of love unimagined were filled with pity and tinged with sorrow. This was the executioner general. "Hello, lass. My name is McCullen, but you can call me Nigel." He stuck out his hand as an act of friendship. An odd act if you're about to kill someone. "What's your name, lassie?" "Everin, sir," she managed to say. "Ah, don't you go and call me, sir. Just call me Nigel. You know why you're here, Evelyn." Evelyn burst into tears again. Nigel moved onto the bed with her and gave her a hug that you would get from a comforting dad. There, lass. We can take this slowly. We have all day," Nigel muttered. They sat like that for a few minutes, with Evelyn bawling uncontrollably. When Evelyn had reached some stability, Nigel decided to ask something. "How much do you know about the war?" That's the elves tried to kill us, and we ran away," Evelyn sniffed. "Right, so I'm not going to hide anything from you. It's because the king said that he had the most beautiful wife." "Really? That's why they tried to kill us?" She dried some of her tears off her cheeks. "Well, lassie, the elves never liked us to begin with. Something about our magic. Well, the elvish king said his wife was more beautiful and went to war. Here, do you want something to drink?" Evelyn nodded. Nigel went over to the table, covered in treats, and grabbed 2 cups and a pitcher. He poured the liquid from the pitcher into the cups and handed one to Evelyn as he sat on the bed. Evelyn sipped it cautiously, but was delighted at the taste. It was warm with cinnamon and nutmeg, and made her think of the warm hearth on a cold day. "It's spiced wine, the Queen's favourite. Anyway, so we went to war. The elves had been prepared and beat everything we threw at them. So we began to run, as the elves killed everyone left behind. But somehow the elves always found us, after we lost most of our people, and it was with a few stragglers left that we found something out. Our strongest magical, Elias the Studious, discovered that the elves could detect and track our magic. And as you know, the normal human has no magic, whereas magicals like you can access magic. By that time, Elias was the last magical we had. After discovering this, he gave the order to have every magical exiled or killed, and then proceeded to kill himself. He claimed it was for our safety. As we continued our flight, we noticed that the elves could no longer track us. With this, we fled through the mountains of Yvian, though most of us died in doing so. Nigel took a big gulp of his wine. As far as the elves know, humanity is dead. We want them to think that, because one day we will emerge from the mountains and kill them like they killed us. So we must stay hidden, and the horrible price is that the lives of our magicals. I'm sorry. They sat quietly, before everyone broke the silence. What happens now? Nigel shifted. Well, it's about 2 to noon, so we got a feast then, so you have 2 hours before. When do I die? Evelyn's voice was small. Nigel took a deep breath. Tonight, you will sleep in this room, and you won't wake up. It'll be painless, and you will be buried with the full honors of a great hero for your sacrifice. Evelyn digested this for a moment. What do I do until then? Well, we can do whatever you want, as long as you don't go outside the palace. But what about my family? My brother? Your parents will receive a pension for the rest of their days. Your brother, he's in the guard, no? He is. He hopes to be a captain one day. We'll see about captain, but lieutenant would be a good starting place. So, where do you want to go first? Nigel carried Evelyn's sleeping form back to the quarters he had first met her in. He would have to inject the poison slowly, so as to not wake her. She was smiling in her sleep, reminiscing over her lost day, her best day. From walking in the royal conservatory, reading in the royal library, to tea with the Queen, she'd been happy. That same youthful joy that cut too deep with Nigel. He put her down on the bed and pulled the covers up over her. She turned in her sleep, muttering something incomprehensible. Nigel pulled out a small needle and slowly but carefully inserted it into her neck. She didn't wake, and she would never again. Like countless others, like Nigel's Ed, into the most serene of sleep. Nigel cried. He cried every time. He cried during the killing and during the burial. He hurt with every magical, with every criminal. His job hurt, but he hurt so others wouldn't. That is the role of the executioner general. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed.